Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Hain. Today I'm going to be showing you my video project for Python using the world data CSV file. I'm going to be looking at population trends across different generations. So I'm going to be looking at um, from baby boomers up to current Gen Z. And I'm going to be evaluating that by comparing birth rates and death rates, to see if, population growth is, slowing down over the generations, increasing, what have you. And then look into some possible drivers behind the reasoning for why that might be, increasing or decreasing. So without further ado, let's get started. So again, this is just, you know, restating what I just said. It's just the scope of what I'll be doing. So first I'm gonna talk about the baby boomers. So for the um, for the data I'll be using, I looked at 1960 as the year I chose. And so here's some maps. You can see the birth rates and death rates in each country. Birth rates are on the left over here, and then the death rates are in the lower right. Um, so you can see, just take a look at these for a second. Note the birth rates. Got the highs and the lows down there. So same with the death rates. So the lighter the color of the country, the lower the rate is for both birth rate and death rate. One thing it's important thing to note is that the scales, while the colors are the same, they're different. So if you'll notice the birth rate scale for 1960, 13 to 58, whereas death rate is 6 to 37. Um, and so, on the birth rate map, the yellow or the lightest shade, right, um, represents 13 to 21, um, whereas 21 on the death rate map could be, more of a blue-green kind of color. Um, so this is the baby boomer era. It's called the baby boomer era because a lot of babies are being born during that time. And so, overall birth rates, per 1,000 people were higher in majority of the world versus the death rates. Um, Again, like I said, the colors can be misleading, just because, the uh, the range of those scales on the maps can be a little different. Um, and the 1960 maps show us that Africa um, and South America really experienced higher birth rates and death rates than the rest of the world. So if we go back, we'll see a lot more blue in Africa and South America, um, especially in birth rates than a lot of the rest of the world. So these are the Gen X maps. I specifically chose 1975 for these maps because there was a historical event that occurred um, in the mid to late 70s that may skew this data a little bit. So as you can see, 1975 birth rate map is, pretty similar to that of the 1960s. Birth rate, seems to have decreased a little bit in the Americas and in North America and Europe. But South America and Africa look pretty similar. Um, Death rates definitely decreased pretty much everywhere between 60 and 75 um, by looking at this map, comparing it back to the 1960 death rate map. But one thing I wanted to note for 1975, and the reason I chose this year is because 1975 was the beginning of the Cambodian genocide that took place. Um, and so if you'll see Cambodia, Southeast Asia, very dark blue there. And it really alters the scale, and skews the data. It's such an outlier at a high death rate of 46 per 1,000, at 46 per 1,000, which is very high. Um, and so, that can skew your data. Definitely you know, if you compare the maps, you'll see that, you know, for example, the second to darkest shade in 1960 is 26 to 32, whereas, on this map it's 32 to 39. Um, so the colors of this death rate map might be a little more misleading just because of Cambodia, which I thought was interesting. Um, so yeah, again, this is just reiterating, stating what I just said, um, you know, about all that. So this is for millennials, did 1994. Um, I also chose this year for a specific reason. And that reason is actually the Rwanda genocide was in this year. So again, it skews the scale um, for the death rate map, and those colors again could be misleading a little bit. So um, yeah, there's that map. But if you'll notice, with all three of these maps, the highs and lows for the birth rates remain, pretty steady. They're not really changing all too much. Um, and so yeah, also for this 1994 map here, Russia, largest country in the world, their death rate is definitely higher than the previous two maps, and that's also a major historical event that is behind that, being the fall of the Soviet Union. There was, after the collapse, a lot of families were stressing for just to feed themselves, stuff like that. So that caused an increase in that year. And yeah, so for Gen Z, chose 2013 as the year for that. Um, and here's the maps for those. And again, like this is more modern times now. 2013, I know it was 10 years ago, but it's still, it's still similar to how life is today, in terms of medical technology and all that stuff. And so, even though you've got a lot more darker shaded countries, you might think the death rate is higher, but if you'll notice, the high is only 15. And so, those countries being darker doesn't necessarily mean that their death rates have increased um, since previous generations. It's just that the overall, rate around the world is decreasing. Um, so yeah, so just a summary of all that. So from the start, with the baby boomers, you can see that birth rates in most parts of the world, um, were high, and as you go down the generations until where we are today, those numbers slowly decline, and the same with the death rates too. They also decline. However, it was in less regions, than that of birth rates. In Africa specifically, you still see very high birth rates and very high death rates, regardless of what generation that may be in. And so, this tells us that, while the population, may still be increasing, the world population is definitely higher than it was today, than it was in 1960 with the baby boomers. It's still increasing, but just the rate at which it is increasing has tapered off some. Yeah, as the birth rates have declined more so, and the death rates have declined. Um, and so I wanted to look at, so real quick, these are some averages of the birth rates and death rates in the world, um, in each of those years that I looked at. So yeah, so you can see in these graphs what I just mentioned on the previous slide is this the steady decline, across the world. But there's a much more significant drop off in birth rate, I would say, than average death rate for sure. And so yeah, so some potential drivers behind this, there's clearly a continental disparity of the birth rates and the death rates, and that could be driven by income levels, And so if we look at our maps again, we can see that no matter, what year generation is being presented, South America and Africa tend to have, the highest numbers for both of those variables. And just a little bit of quick research um, will show you that these regions of the world, also are the poorest regions of the world. If you measure that by GDP per capita, um, the data clearly shows that these numbers are significantly lower than, areas like, Australia or North America or Europe or Asia. Um, and so, while it's uncertain, to really draw a conclusion that, the income levels and poverty rates, these parts of the world are, are directly causing, um, these high levels of birth rate and death rate. Um, there is a strong positive correlation among them, which implies that, it likely is one of those driving factors behind that. And so that's it. That's all I have today. So just a quick little project about looking into some population trends, different generations over the years, and how things have changed, what might be causing those. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my presentation here, and yeah, thanks for watching.